in that growing ministry over there. In 1870, Horatio and Anna, they lost their 4-year-old child to a fever. Pretty sad, huh? Next year, the very next year, 1871, the Great Chicago Fire happened and wiped out all of their real estate, all of their wealth, all of their holdings. A year after that, Horatio and Anna decided that maybe they needed a break, a respite, if you will. And so Anna and the 4 daughters got on a steamer ship, got on a ship to go to England for a vacation. And out in the middle of the ocean, the ship sank. The ship was wrecked. And Anna, the wife, sent a telegram from London that said, "I alone survived." Almost like Moby Dick. I alone survived. The 4 daughters taken from Anna. And Horatio is in Chicago. He gets to New York as soon as possible, gets on a ship so he can go to London to be with his grief-stricken wife. And it says that this is a true story, he was on board the ship. And when he got out in the middle of the ocean, the captain says, "Horatio, it's about right here in the middle of the ocean. In the middle, it's about right here where your 4 daughters went down with the ship." And Horatio went below decks, and his response to losing his son, to losing all of his wealth, to losing his 4 daughters, his response is something that pops up every now and then, pretty regularly. His response was not what we would think. His response was to write this hymn. Some of you know this hymn, right? "Sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, you taught me to say, it is well with my soul." That's a famous hymn. Some of you know that hymn? Yeah? That was his response. His response was not to cry, to curse God. It's not to be angry. And I bring that up this morning to say, I can't imagine losing everything, and yet still, in the midst of all this unthinkable horror, this unthinkable loss, having the courage to trust God. I think it's tough. And yet people do it every single day. They did it then, they're doing it now. And that's what I really want to drill down on today. I really want to think more deeply about that. How does that happen? How is it that someone can lose almost everything and yet still trust in the mercy and the grace and the goodness of God? How is it that someone can lose almost everything and yet still trust the God of grace, the God of mercy, the God of love while they're in the desert? That's partly why we're doing rocks and bare branches with just a little bit of green, is to try and get this message across that when we are going through tough times, really tough times, and I don't mean like, you go to the drive-thru at McDonald's and they're out of chicken McNuggets and you call 911. That's not what I mean. You've been hearing some of those stories? That's like true story. People go through drive-thru, they're so mad that they don't have the Whopper Jr. or whatever, they call 911 and want the police to come. It's true. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when we lose things, when we really do feel like we are wandering in the valley of the shadow of death. When it seems like life was this way, yay, and then not only was the rug pulled out from under us, but the whole house came tumbling around our ears. That's Job's story, and that's the story of many people, some right here in this room. And again, I say, wow. How do you hold on to God, and how do you hold on to faith in the midst of all this? Because people do it. Part of what it is reconciling our faith with suffering. Reconciling our faith with suffering. When we're in the midst of the big tragedies and big tests, when we're trying to figure out why horrible things happen to faithful people. That's the question of all time, isn't it? Some people say, why do bad things happen to good people? I'm not going to say good people because I have some problems defining that. Fair enough? What does good mean? What does good mean? White? What's good mean? Middle class? So I don't use good. But I will use faithful. Because that's Job's story. Why do horrible, rotten, terrible things happen to faithful people? That's the dilemma that's been with us since the beginning of time. And maybe you don't think about it a lot. Maybe you don't want to think about it a lot until you have to. Maybe you don't want to think about why horrible things happen to faithful people until suddenly, like some parents down the road in Maquoketa that are dealing with 2 teenagers that were killed early this morning, right? Some of you know about that, maybe some of you don't. See, there's a group of folks down the road from us that are suddenly confronted with this question. Why do horrible things happen to faithful people out of the blue? What happened? Why do bad things, horrible things happen to people who are innocent? Why do 6-month-old babies get cancer? Why do 3-year-olds have rare blood disease? Why do horrible things happen even to God-loving, God-worshiping, God-serving people, people who are trying to love God, love others, and serve the world? This is what I'm talking about this morning. Is that the book of Job and the whole Christian walk, at some time or another, forces us to confront this issue and try and reconcile it. And so we start out by asking the question, why? And that's fair. We're not bad, mean, or sinful because we ask why. That's what Job did. Right? You with me? That's what he was all about. Why? Why this? And he said, man, God, if you show up, I've got some questions for you. Fair enough. Right? Fair enough. That's what we're faced with. People who are trying to be more like Jesus in what they say and what they do, and yet, still the tornadoes come through, the floodwaters come up, the tsunamis come, the airplanes run into Twin Towers, all this stuff happens, and we're left going, what? I mean, and maybe there's part of us, a sneaking part of us, maybe there's part of us that says, well, but accidents and bad things should happen just to, just to bad people, right? Because it doesn't seem fair that bad, horrible things happen to faithful people who smile and dress up and come to church every Sunday. It doesn't seem fair, does it? Come on, doesn't that seem fair? And maybe down inside of us, there's part of us that we want to explain this, and we think, well, you know what? To bad people, I can get it. To godless sinners, to godless people, I can understand horrible things happen. But not for good people, right? That's part of the dilemma. The book of Job, as I said, is a hard book. The first hard thing about it is, why do bad things happen to faithful people? That's the first hard thing about it. Job, faithful man. He's trying to figure it out, trying to make sense of it. You keep going in the book of Job, though, and it's also informative that his friends show up. His friends show up to help him. They sit around with Job for 7 days before they say anything. Imagine that, being around the campfire, scratching your boils with a piece of pottery.